You are looking live at the Tech Sideline Podcast setting in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center.
And it all starts in 3, 2. Hello, Tech fans, and welcome in to episode 111 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, originating from TSL's high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Whether you're watching live on Facebook, whether you're watching archived on YouTube, listening on SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, wherever and however you consume the Tech Sideline Podcast, we're so glad that you could join us today as we record at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, January 22nd. A lot to talk about today. A lot has already happened today on this Wednesday morning as the 2020 Virginia Tech football schedule has been announced less than an hour ago. As we record this edition of the Tech Sideline Podcast, we'll get the full breakdown from our podcast team, talking about the toughest stretches for Virginia Tech, home games, away games, the whole 9 yards coming up here on the Tech Sideline Podcast. Also happening today on Wednesday at 8 o'clock p.m. tonight, Virginia Tech hosts UNC, and the Hokies are 7-point favorites. We'll talk about Virginia Tech and North Carolina in just a little bit. We'll also talk about Landers Nolley and an interesting quote that was put out by the Roanoke Times yesterday and Mark Berman. We'll talk about Landers Nolley and his future at Virginia Tech in a little bit. And as I asked for those that were on the message boards on Tuesday night, asked for your questions. We will get to those on Facebook Live and the ones that were done before the show. All coming up on episode 111 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Again, we've got our normal crew here today. We've got the best producer in the land behind the scenes, Malcolm Stewart. He's taking your questions. Be sure to drop those now on Facebook Live. On the podcast set, we've got our managing editor, Chris Coleman. We've got our general manager and founder, Will Stewart. And I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. Again, so glad that everybody could join us today. A reminder that this week and every week, the Tech Sideline Podcast is presented by the Fisher Law Firm, Virginia's trusted DUI and traffic defense firm, dedicated to defending individuals charged with traffic-related offenses. From their office in Blacksburg, they are able to serve the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. Whether you are charged with driving under the influence or speeding, the Fisher Law Firm realizes that each case is important to the client. To date, the firm has defended more than 30,000 people charged with moving violations. For a free consultation, call anytime, day or evening, toll free at 1-800-680-7031. Again, that's 1-800-680-7031, or you can email them at info@fisherlegal.com. And with that, I turn it over to Will Stewart and Chris Coleman here on the podcast set. Gentlemen, good morning. It has been a busy day already with the release of the schedule. What do you most look forward to when the schedule comes out? What's the number one thing? Because it's not just the Tech schedule that comes out, it's everybody in the ACC.
I look forward to the complaining.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I guess what we do is we take the schedule and we look at the whole ACC schedule, and we're going to do that here on the podcast and check and see what teams are doing before they play Virginia Tech. So the first thing you do is look at Tech's schedule and, are there any Thursday games, Friday games, et cetera, or a bunch of road games strung together. And then you start looking to see what teams do before they play Tech. So that's what we'll be focusing on.
Yeah, you can't fully analyze the schedule until you look and see, who is Virginia playing the week before they play Virginia Tech and things like that. Yeah. So when the schedule first came out, you're like, oh, okay. Don't really have a lot of complaints. I'm not particularly happy about at Louisville, at Pitt, back-to-back on the road with the Pitt game being on a Friday. But at the same time, Pitt is at Florida State the previous week. So, they've got a long flight in there too. And,
but let's start first with actually going over the Tech schedule before we start breaking down who.
And that was a tease. I kind of wanted to get your initial thoughts on it real quick. We'll do that in just a minute. One thing I'm going to get in the habit of start doing a little bit earlier, though, is talking about what's on TechSideline.com and different ways to follow TSL as we get going on the podcast. A reminder to follow Tech Sideline on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Tech Sideline. We'll be pushing out all of our content there. As always, TechSideline.com. There are a couple of great articles out right now. Chris, I'll let you just talk about that quickly. You've got an article about the Quadrant 1 victories and the uniqueness of Tyrece Radford. What should those look forward to in that article?
Right now, as of yesterday afternoon, Virginia Tech had 3 Quadrant 1 wins because Clemson is up to number 75 and Syracuse is up to number 70. By losing to Syracuse on Saturday, Virginia Tech gave themselves an extra Quadrant 1 win because that bumps Syracuse up into the top 75. So Virginia Tech has a road win over Syracuse, so that now counts as a quadrant 1 win instead of a quadrant 2 win. They have to stay in the top 75 for it to be there. As far as Tyrece Radford goes, he's number 1 in the country in Ken Pomeroy's offensive rating. It's an offensive efficiency metric. I think Radford is 14th in the country in 2-point field goal percentage, and he's the only player, and every player ahead of him is 6'5" or taller. P.J. Horn is actually 9th on that list, too. Which is also impressive considering he's going up against guys anywhere from 3 to 6 inches taller than him every single night. And Radford is number 3 in the country in turnover rate. So when you shoot a high percentage and you don't turn the ball over, that equals a high offensive efficiency rating. And I believe he's ranked number 1 in the country since 2008. Out of all players with a usage rate of 15 or higher, and don't ask me what usage rate
Yeah, we don't know
means.
what that means.
These are advanced metrics, but all we know is he's best in the country since 2008, which is so that's how unique he
in
is.
offensive efficiency.
Yeah, an
for guys
offensive
with a
rating.
usage rate of 15 or higher.
Right.
So that article is up on Tech Sideline right now. And then, Will, I want to just tease this as well. I know Corey Van Dyke has been putting out a couple of really good baseball articles right now. He's got part 3 of his analytics preview right now, and looks like he did a deep dive into that. That's available right now as well as the football schedule.
And that's a free article. And when we talk about resources and the money schools are throwing at things these days, it's actually a good example is Wake Forest baseball program. And I forget the exact title, but they actually hired a PhD to analyze like pitching mechanics in what they call their pitching lab at Wake Forest.
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest baseball. So Wake Forest baseball has something like that. Can you imagine what some of these huge football programs with endless budgets have that we don't even know about?
Yeah, that we can't even imagine. And they're not real public about it. They list all their staff, but they don't really say what they do.
Yeah.
Again, that's all on techsideline.com right now. Again, a reminder, annual price $84.99, monthly price $8.49, student price $29.99. It's a great time to become a part of the TSL family.
Indeed. We picked up a lot of subscribers this fall. It's been a really good year. So we're really pleased with the whole podcast and all the different ways that we reach people and how it all works together.
Awesome. Again, that's what's going on techsideline.com right now, the articles that are there right now, and that is how you join the TSL family. Okay, now let's dive right in. I gave you guys a little bit of a tease what you were talking about and looking at. Again, this morning at 9 o'clock on Packer and Durham, the ACC football schedule was announced. That included Virginia Tech's schedule, and now we know what every date holds for the Hokies. Will, I want to start with you. We knew about Penn State, of course, as one of the marquee home games in the non-conference slate, but when you look at the conference slate, what's the number one thing that jumps out at you?
The conference slate. Let's see. There's not really a number one thing. I'm sitting here looking at it. The fact that it's the return of Thursday night football, October 22nd against Boston College. And that's kind of, it seems to me like every time Tech plays on Thursday, it's Georgia Tech or Boston College. So, and it's funny, the conversation around Thursday night football has really changed over the years, and a lot of that has to do with the NFL and just the way Thursday night football itself has changed. We talked on a recent podcast about when Jonathan Fisher was on about 1994, and that was Tech's first appearance on Thursday night football. They played, I think Tech was ranked 12th in the country, and they played West Virginia, smoked them like 34-6, and got a lot of coverage out of it. It was really cool back then. And as you know, Tech kind of built part of the way they built their brand was playing Thursday night football. And back then they had, who was the crew, Chris? It was Tirico, Fowler. Tirico, Corso, and Herbstreit.
Was that in 19? See, I don't remember details about 94 and stuff like that.
Well, I don't know if they were working it back then, but when it really hit its stride, that was the broadcasting.
Yeah.
I remember that Georgia Tech comeback game in 2004. I think that was a Thursday night game with Tirico doing play-by-play.
So it was Tirico and not Fowler.
Yes, okay. There for a long time it was Mike Tirico, and the analysts were Kirk Herbstreit when Kirk was first getting started out, and Lee Corso.
Right, that they would do that Thursday night game, and then on Friday they would fly to wherever they're going for game day.
Yeah, I think that came later and overlapped for a while. Herbie wasn't as big a name back then, and I believe for Corso this was pre-stroke. When he was. I was never really big on Corso in the booth, but they did make a good broadcast team, and Tirico's fantastic,
One of the best.
So it was a real showcase, and then the NFL added a Thursday night game. And at first it was only on the NFL Network, like the first 8 weeks of the season. And then didn't they add recently, like there's games on Thursday night on ESPN or NBC?
For Thursday Night Football? Like for
Thursday
NFL?
Night Football for the NFL.
I believe it's on Fox now. It's kind of been a rotate. It was on NBC at one point, and then Fox got the rights to it. I think at one point CBS had it. It's kind of been hot potato over the last couple of years of who's had it. But I will say about college football and the Thursday Night Football, one thing ESPN did in terms of the broadcast team, it's kind of been a shuffle the last couple of years who's doing it. They have Adam Amin this past year doing it, who's a rising star in terms of the play-by-play industry with Pat McAfee, who talk about identifying with the younger crowd. Used to have his own podcast, Punter for the Colts.
Interesting.
Used to work for Barstool Sports. He's a really funny, outgoing guy that just I think a lot of the younger generation enjoys. And then Matt Hasselbeck. So it was I think ESPN put a lot of effort into the broadcast team this year to try and bring some energy to it this past year. So I'm curious to see if the three of them will continue this coming year.
So, it's just kind of lost some of its luster.
Yeah. I don't think this is going to be a well-attended game.
Oh, no, I don't think so either.
Thursday night against our fans don't care about Boston College.
Yeah.
They have to take 2 days off from work instead of one. If it was a Friday game, you only have to take 1 day off work.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think all Thursday night game against Boston College does is make people say, well, we only have one Saturday home game in October, which is true.
Well, and that's what we always used to gripe about back in the day when Tech would play 2 Thursday night games a year. We'd fuss that there were no Saturday games during October when the weather's incredible.
Right. So they go October 3rd, home against Georgia Tech. They don't play a Saturday home game again until November 14th against Miami. I mean, that's
this was
6
actually
weeks.
the case year after year there for a while.
Real quick, before we get going, for those that are listening, I do want to read off the schedule. For those that have not gotten to see it, I think
let's
that would be
backtrack
great.
a little
So
bit.
September 5th, Tech will open up against Liberty. September 12th, the marquee game home against Penn State. September 19th, they go to Middle Tennessee State. September 26th, home against North Alabama. October 3rd, ACC play begins with a home game against Georgia Tech. October 10th, Virginia Tech goes to North Carolina. October 22nd, home against Boston College on a Thursday. The bye week is in between North Carolina and Boston College. October 31st, Tech's going to play on Halloween at Louisville. November 6th at Pittsburgh on a Friday night. November 14th, home against Miami. November 21st at Duke. And then November 28th, Tech and Virginia will play on a Saturday.
Yep.
No longer Black Friday this year when Tech and UVA play for the Commonwealth Clash. That is the 2020 schedule for Virginia Tech. Chris, one thing I always like to do when I see schedules, I want to know what's the toughest stretch for Virginia Tech. When you look at this schedule, what's going to be one of the most important stretches for this Tech team?
The 3-game stretch at Louisville on Halloween, at Pitt the next Friday, and then back home against Miami. The marquee matchup in the ACC is Virginia Tech and North Carolina. It seems like everybody has them as the top 2 teams in the Coastal. That comes on October 10th. That'll be a big deal, but what will decide the Coastal for Virginia Tech is that 3-game stretch against Louisville, Pitt, and Miami. North Carolina, North Carolina's last 3 ACC games are Pitt, Boston College. They're NC State games on a Friday, so that's who's been flipped.
So that's the Black Friday game now.
Yeah, that's all right.
North Carolina hosting NC State.
Yeah. So I think while obviously the Virginia Tech North Carolina game is going to be very important on October 10th, that head-to-head matchup could be critical.
Well,
it's not going to decide anything.
But I think whoever wins that gets the inside track.
Correct.
And then it gets settled.
But there's plenty of chances to lose, though. Like even if Virginia Tech beats North Carolina, they could lose back-to-back road games against Louisville and Pitt, and boom, just like that, drop below North Carolina. Let's see, North Carolina plays Auburn in the Georgia Dome this year.
And they open the year at UCF.
Oh, man.
So UCF is going to be better.
Yeah, they open at UCF. North Carolina does. They open at UCF on a Friday. Then the following Saturday, they play in Atlanta. So usually that Atlanta game between like SEC, ACC type stuff is a kickoff game. And that's not kickoff. That's the second week of the season.
So they could be 0-2. As much hype as they're getting, they could be 0-2 just because of how their schedule sets up.
And then we're going to find out about their character, if they
exactly.
rebound. Well, they got a great quarterback, so
yeah.
So that's the toughest stretch. Let's review that again: at Louisville, at Pitt, and Miami.
Well, let me ask you this: let's talk about that North Carolina game because there's going to be a lot that's made of that. Where the October 10th stretch, so Tech open, they go North Alabama, Georgia Tech, at North Carolina. Yeah. What do you think about the lead up to that game in Chapel Hill?
I was gonna say the only way it could be better, and this is gonna sound kind of funny after what Duke did to Virginia Tech last year. The only way it could be better is if Virginia Tech played Duke instead of Georgia Tech that week before going to North Carolina. What I'm doing is I'm looking for what's the weakest team Virginia Tech could play before they play North Carolina.
I still think it might be Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
I think that's a 4-year rebuild job.
Yeah, I think they're on the way back, but you're right. Barring something,
barring
a Mike Young type.
Well, have they signed a grad transfer quarterback? I don't see how they're going to have an. Yeah. If they haven't, they're still not going to have an effective quarterback.
Yeah.
Right?
So, you're right. Maybe it's a wash. We'll find out. If you caught the comment I made, nobody expected Virginia Tech basketball to be any good this year, and Mike Young's done a phenomenal job coaching.
Right.
So, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Georgia Tech could bounce back faster than you thought. So that's my thought on that one.
Chris, is the underrated game on this schedule at Louisville on Halloween?
Yeah, I do feel bad for someone pointed this out to me earlier today. He was basically like, man, I was really looking forward to that Louisville game, but I've got young kids. Right. I got to take them out for Halloween, right? So I can't make that road trip. Oh, and by the way, you don't have a chance to make that road trip again for 12 years? Is that what you told me?
Under the current scheduling model, it would be 12 years.
Right.
See, Halloween's not big around my house.
Yeah, I don't. It's not a big deal to me either. Yeah. So holidays don't affect football's my number one priority.
Sure.
Over holidays, everything.
Little kids,
but I don't have kids, yes. So yeah.
Malcolm's done trick or treating.
Yeah, that's right. He went trick or treating for the last time 2 years ago.
Real quick, I do want to talk about that Louisville game just a little bit. We talked a little bit about Scott Satterfield coming over from App State. Louisville was 2-10 and a disaster after the 2018 season. I forget, did he win Coach of the Year in the ACC?
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah,
I think he did. Yeah.
And I think
and it actually wasn't real close.
Yeah,
I think that was probably personally me. I don't like to put my opinion out too much, but I thought that was a home run. I mean, with the job that he did with everything that happened, the Bobby Petrino era to that. I mean, so I think Louisville, they return a lot, Chris.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. They got to learn how to play defense. That's the main thing. They've got enough talent on that team where they can cause plenty of teams some problems.
They're difficult offensively.
They are. I watched the Louisville Wake game this past year, and it was just I don't think I saw a punt the whole game when I was watching. It was ridiculous. But I will say that for any fan interested in making that trip, if you're from Southwest Virginia, I did check Google Flights from Roanoke to Louisville yesterday. And if you fly out the day before the game and fly back the day after the game, I think the flights are like $250 round trip. Yeah. So not a bad deal if you could book them right now. I don't know how much it is from Richmond or Northern Virginia or anything like that, but I looked into it.
Yeah, and from Roanoke, I think you said it
goes
to Charlotte and then
or Philadelphia. It depends on what time.
Again, we're breaking down the Virginia Tech football schedule that was just announced. Recording the Tech Sideline Podcast presented by the Fisher Law Firm Wednesday, January 22nd. Recording at 10 in the morning. Will, let's talk a little bit about the non-conference slate. We've known that, but as we break down the entire schedule, we've talked about the ACC. Of course, the Hokies open with Liberty for the second time in the Justin Fuente era. That was actually his first game as coach of the Hokies. And then Penn State on September the 12th, and a trip to Middle Tennessee State afterwards. Your thoughts on the non-conference slate and how it all shaked out?
I am very excited about that trip to Middle Tennessee State. So Tech is going two interesting places this year. They're going to MTSU, which is right outside of Nashville in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and they're going to Louisville. So these are two places I've never been before. I think these are two good destinations. And, when I was younger, I didn't care about that stuff. It was all about the game, But when you spend 20-plus years running Tech Sideline and you basically have to not spend any time with your wife for 3 or 4 months at a stretch. That's an opportunity for me to take the wife to Middle Tennessee State, check out Nashville, and I don't know if she'll want to go to Louisville or not, but that's a chance to go there if you've never been to Louisville, to go check it out. So that's my thought on a couple of the road venues. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the Penn State game. This is Virginia Tech has a high-profile matchup in Lane Stadium pretty much every year for the last 5 or 6 years, except for last year. Ohio State at home, Clemson at home, Notre Dame, and the script so far has been the same in all those, outstanding presentation. It gets put on Saturday night in a high-profile, slot. Mm-hmm. Outstanding presentation by ESPN of Enter Sandman, stuff that goes on YouTube and looks great. And then Tech goes out and loses the game, and this one's got some extra juice to it. It's one thing to play Ohio State and play Clemson and play Notre Dame, but Penn State has been coming into the state of Virginia and spanking Virginia Tech in recruiting. So this has that added element to it.
And Tech's never played Penn State before, right?
Not that I know of, and getting back to my wife, she's a Penn State grad, so I really don't want to sit there in Lane Stadium next to my wife while Penn State beats Virginia Tech. So I just, just please win that one.
Let's do this. So we kind of talked about that headlines the non-conference slate. How about this? Now, a lot can happen from now to then, but looking how the schedule, I want to keep this in mind. Yeah. I'm going to ask you this question and keep in mind how the schedule shapes out for Virginia Tech, who they have to play the week before, and all that in mind. Uh-huh. Rank the top 3 toughest games for Virginia Tech on the schedule in 2020.
Penn State's number 1.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
At you, right off the top of my head, at UNC is number 2.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
And then after that,
I would say at Louisville.
Yeah, your candidates are at Louisville, at Pitt, and Miami at home.
You could say Miami at home because, all right, if that quarterback grad transfer if he plays well for Miami, they're going to be a different team if they have a good quarterback.
Yeah, Miami picked up a Houston transfer, right. grad transfer quarterback.
He's legit.
And they also picked up Quincy Roche.
Yep.
So, that's one of those deals. I don't want to be over emphatic about this, but that one player could literally be the difference in the game.
Sure. And he picked Miami, and it's easy to see why. Well, first of all, he already had a pre-existing relationship with Diaz because Diaz was Temple's head coach for like a month.
Yeah.
And I think their strength and conditioning coach was also Temple's strength and conditioning coach. Yeah. But the main thing...
And let's jump in here and say these players get really close to these strength and conditioning guys. Don't just sit there and go, yeah, whatever. They spend more time... It may be a truth, but there's a saying out there that the players spend more time with the strength and conditioning coach than they do with any of the coaches.
Accurate statement. Yeah, a very accurate statement in my opinion. And he picked Miami because it's fairly simple. The other defensive end for Miami had 15.5 sacks this past year, so you can't double team either one of them, right? Yeah. You come to Virginia Tech and the other defensive end had 1 sack last year, right? Like, let's say Roche had come to Tech and started at right defensive end, Garbutt's on the other side, and you just double team Roche the whole time.
And Virginia Tech, they haven't really shown. Chris, tell me whether you agree or disagree with this. They haven't really flashed a lot of pass rushing ability from the linebacker position either. They don't have a freak athletic outside linebacker. That they can pair out there with a defensive
They did
end.
rank probably the top 30 in sacks this year, so they had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Shamari Connor, 5.5 sacks, I think, led the team. There's not one dynamic pass rusher on the team though.
But you look at a guy like Alan Tisdale, who is physically more impressive than most of the guys Tech played at linebacker. He's not necessarily a better player. We haven't seen enough of him.
Well, he's the
really
most athletic.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree. It's a hard sell when you start talking about the guys that are around you on the defense.
Sure.
Right.
And I don't say that to denigrate Virginia Tech's defensive players, but like Chris said, a guy on the other side's got 15 sacks for Miami and he's coming back.
I think Miami all of a sudden went from.
How do we delve down that path? What were we talking about? The 3 toughest games. So Miami could easily be on that list.
Yeah.
But Miami could also go 5-7. Right?
I've
You just
developed
don't-
the opinion that Miami game's just a crapshoot every year because they just their in-game motivation in any particular game just
can vary.
Goes all over the place.
Can vary from week to week, from quarter to quarter.
That team can absolutely lay dead. Well, look at what they did last year. They got down 28-0 to Virginia Tech.
Did they score a point against Louisiana Tech in the bowl game?
No,
14-0 loss. And you know the article that came out about when they lost to Florida International and how the team ignored, or major members of the team ignored curfew the night before, and all went out, and everybody gets one strike for a drug test at Miami, and how they took advantage of that night before the Florida International game. I mean, come on, man. Now, first of all, why don't you have your team together at a hotel the night before a football game? That's what Virginia
why aren't you
Tech
doing
does.
bed checks?
Right. Stuff like that. So I don't know. Enough about Miami, but they could be second or third on this list. They could be 7th or 8th on this list.
That's right. Now Miami was the game that Virginia Tech started turning it around this past season.
Yeah, who would have thought that heading into the season, right?
Two more questions, and Will, I know we kind of talked about this off air, but I feel like every year the game that always kind of sneaks up on people and you don't really realize how big it can be is when Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech play. Hokies at Pittsburgh on a Friday night, November 6th. And you were saying that Pittsburgh, they could be fired up to play the Hokies on that kind of stage. What do you think that game means for Tech?
Well, it's 6 days after another road game, so that's the toughest setup.
Hope that Louisville is at noon. Because if Louisville happened to be like a night game, Virginia Tech would end up losing all of Sunday on a short week.
Yep. So that is the toughest setup in the schedule. Will it wind up being the toughest game? We don't know. We'll see. I'm not really up to speed on Pitt.
They got to be able to pass the football.
Kenny Pickett does come back.
Past year,
is Pickett still coming back?
He'll be a senior.
Gosh, he's been there forever.
But they're so one-dimensional. And, Virginia Tech wasn't a great defense this past year, but they made the step that if you didn't have a big-time running quarterback and then you couldn't throw the football, if all you can do is hand the ball off to your running backs, Virginia Tech is going to crush you, as most teams should. Yeah. So Pitt's offense is just not good.
Well, I remember last year Pitt was a passing team. They were one-dimensional.
You're right. It was one-dimensional the other way around. The year before that, they could only run it and they couldn't pass it.
Yeah.
Right. So Pitt's, you've got to be able to do, generally speaking, unless you're a mobile quarterback like Kentucky, you've got to be able to do more than one thing well to beat the Tech defense. I don't know anything about the personnel Pitt has coming back, but their offensive line has to be better because it was bad this past year, and they didn't have a great running back either.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just I don't like there are two places I don't like to go. I don't like to go to Pitt. Virginia Tech typically doesn't play well up there. So I'm going to put that down as my third toughest game.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
For that reason and the setup.
How about thoughts on Tech playing at Duke before UVA? How that schedule worked out for that?
I'm good with that. Duke, I have no factual evidence to back this up. They strike me as a team the past few years that has been better early in the season than late. I mean, they got on a bad streak this year, late in the season, and didn't go to a bowl. And remember the season before that, it was, I guess the last game of the season when Wake Forest beat them by like 50 at Duke. Or it was late in the season for sure.
Yeah.
So they just strike me as a team that has gotten worse as the season has gone on the last couple of years. It doesn't mean their 2020 team will be the same way, but I'm okay with it. It just feels so odd to say this, considering Duke won the game 45-10 this past year, but Virginia Tech's better than Duke, and I'm fine with it. I feel good about that game coming against Virginia. I'm glad Virginia plays Pitt the week before. You can't make any schedule excuses this year because Virginia's 4 games before they play Virginia Tech is Miami, Louisville, at Duke, home against Pitt. So there's no Liberty in there. There's no bye week in there.
Wow.
Yeah. So all things are even as far as schedule goes heading into that Tech UVA game.
All right, so speaking of the Tech UVA game, are you sad it's not on Black Friday anymore, or are you happy for it to go to a Saturday?
I am sad from the standpoint that I always wanted to see Tech at home on a Friday, call it the Black Friday game, and wear black uniforms.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get that chance this year. Let's see. As a home game, I don't think I care if it's on Friday or Saturday. as a road game. Last year, I did not like traveling the day after Thanksgiving. I think as a home game, I'd actually prefer it to be on Friday because then there'll be some good games on Saturday and you can watch all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the rivalry games.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I guess
as a home game, the other team has only a 6-day break usually, and then they're traveling.
Do you think it gives the chance if they keep it Saturday on both sides? It does give the students. I'm not going to say it's a huge difference the one day, but students coming back on a Saturday compared to a Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, it could help student attendance.
That's very true.
Can't hurt.
Yeah. Yep. Good point.
So again, that's the look at the schedule right now, and we have had some people comment. I put out on the boards last night some questions in advance. We're going to get to those a little bit later, those on Facebook Live, but a lot of people are wanting to know predictions on the season. It's early, but you look at this schedule.
So before we do that, let's run down, and we can do this quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who every ACC team plays before they play Virginia Tech.
Cool.
Boston College, before they play that Thursday night game, plays at home against Louisville. Now they have a 12-day break, so it's not the Saturday before traveling to Virginia Tech. Duke is at Georgia Tech. Duke hosts Virginia and Virginia Tech in the last 2 weeks of the season. Georgia Tech is at UNC before traveling to Virginia Tech. So I kind of like that setup. And there are 3 teams that play Florida State the week before they play Virginia Tech.
Interesting.
Louisville hosts Florida State and Virginia Tech back-to-back weeks. Miami hosts Florida State, then travels to Virginia Tech. I kind of like that. And Pitt travels to Florida State and then hosts Virginia Tech the following Friday. So at least Pitt is traveling also the week before they play Virginia Tech. So they'll have a travel day in there the same way that Virginia Tech will have one on the way down there. Let's see. North Carolina is at Virginia before they host Virginia Tech. I like that. And Virginia is, as Chris detailed, Miami, Louisville, at Duke, Pitt, and then at Virginia Tech. So I think from that standpoint, last year, Chris might remember the details more accurate than me. Last year, a lot of teams had open bye weeks before they played Virginia Tech. I think it's a pretty good setup this year.
I think there's nothing egregious on the schedule that makes me say, oh my gosh, this is unfair. You can talk about the at Louisville and then 6 days later at Pitt. But if I ran Boston College Sideline.com, I'm sure I could nitpick their schedule and come up with something that I don't like either. Like, for example, Louisville's in-state rival is Kentucky, right? Well, the ACC's sending them to Notre Dame the week before they play Kentucky. I mean, that stinks for Louisville. I'd be mad about that.
Yeah, it does.
So everybody's got something on their schedule that I'm sure that they can be upset about to a certain extent.
But I think all the way around, Tech's schedule is pretty fair, and who the other teams play before they play Tech
I think it's a fair schedule. Yeah. I really do. By the way, I see 2 other ACC teams are playing Liberty this year. NC State's playing Liberty the week before they play North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So Liberty's that team everybody apparently wants to play the week before they're in state
Liberty
rival.
is a new D1 FBS school. They're trying to play as many teams. All right, guys, so let's do it. Well, I'm glad you did that because it does give a lot of perspective to see what other teams are going to have to do before they play Virginia Tech.
No, I'll say this. I would be mad about this if I was a Georgia Tech fan.
What?
This is a bad schedule. Or they open the season on Thursday night again against Clemson for the 2nd year in a row. So they're going to start out 0-1. And Gardner-Webb, UCF, fine. But then 4 of their next 5 games are on the road, all ACC opponents.
Well, not even just
and then at the end of the season, Notre Dame, Miami, and Georgia to end the season.
Wow.
That is awful.
Yeah, well, UCF's going to be a top 25 team. UCF, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Virginia at Pitt, Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia on the schedule. That is a brutal schedule.
Brutal,
You're right.
Man. Anyway.
Wow. No, that's a good point. By the way, one game to look out for to open up with I'm looking at right now is a game to the opening weekend of college football. How about Florida State and West Virginia? Mike Norvell.
It's too bad Florida State's not better.
And that game's in Atlanta, Georgia. So the ACC, that's back-to-back weeks. The ACC has a neutral site non-conference game in the city of Atlanta. Let's see. Looks like the opening weekend is NC State at Louisville on a Thursday. North Carolina plays at UCF on that Friday. Obviously, Georgia Tech, Clemson on that Thursday. Boston College, Syracuse on that Friday. Pretty sure that'll be a Friday game from now until the end of time.
Little Big East clash.
Virginia and Georgia that Monday. So you've got ACC games from Thursday through Monday that opening week, with the exception of Sunday.
Yeah, UVA Georgia on that Monday to close out. That'll be interesting.
And that is in Atlanta also.
Yeah, a lot of games in Atlanta.
Yeah. All right.
So let's do it. So our early. I don't know how you guys want to attack this. However way you guys want to, but a lot of people wanted to see record or wins and losses as a whole. If you guys want to go down the list and give what you think win or loss now, not having any idea necessarily what's coming back for some of the other teams.
I have no clue about Middle Tennessee State or any of those.
If you guys want to go down the list and go what you think right now here
about,
on
just talk about Tech's
January.
Chances.
Yes, Tech's chances. Sure. Yeah. So open up against Liberty again. They lose a lot from last year's team, and they did win a bowl game, but a game I'm sure you guys both feel comfortable with.
Liberty can't beat Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech can beat Virginia Tech. So if Virginia Tech just avoids turnovers and plays a halfway smart football game, they'll win.
So mark that one down as a win.
Yep.
Penn State.
Loss. Until you prove otherwise, man.
I agree, but we're due. The law of averages are due to win one of those games, right?
Oh, no.
I was about to say,
people hate it when you use the phrase law of averages.
The last time I heard law of averages was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
That's true. And I was right. And I was
it doesn't matter if you're right or not. The emotional types get bent, and the analytical types tell you you're using the phrase incorrectly. So
I am. It is
that phrase is verboten.
Yeah.
Okay.
Virginia Tech is due to win a game like this.
There you go.
Right,
So nonetheless, there's a long track record of.
I mean, generally the teams with the most talent win, and Penn State has the most talent.
Right.
So
at Middle Tennessee State, like we talked about, that'll be an interesting.
I guess. Yeah.
They're by the way, I should know they're Conference USA, I believe, correct?
That's
or Sun
correct.
Belt? It's Conference USA. Okay.
USA.
All right. North Alabama,
Who I know absolutely nothing about. I don't even know their mascot.
I believe they're the Panthers.
I believe you're right.
Or Jaguars.
Jaguars.
I
Good
think.
gracious. It doesn't matter.
It was some sort of cat. I was doing
sort
their
of cat.
logo. Some.
I'm gonna look that up.
Oh,
All right.
well, you've got the
Panther type
computer.
thing.
All right. So how about we talk about this UNC game for a little bit?
Now wait a minute, you got to do Georgia Tech.
Oh,
that's
Georgia Tech win. Now
So
think about this. Like, if Virginia Tech beats Penn State, I think they're going to be 5-0 going into that North Carolina game.
Right.
5-0 and probably ranked in the top 10, quite frankly, if you beat Penn State.
Yeah. And that would have some extra juice if Tech had won the bowl game. Tech would be a ranked team going into the season if they'd won their bowl game.
They still might be. I saw a preseason poll with them 20th the other day. Athlon has them preseason 20th.
And I think that's the level-headed thing to do because bowl games are bowl games.
Yeah, they're crapshoots. Yeah, absolutely.
Real quick timeout. So North Alabama is the only school in the country to have a living mascot on campus.
That's not true.
That's not true.
LSU has one on campus. They have a tiger. You can go by and see him. He's got his cage.
Here's the first
that's
sentence.
not true.
University of
Who
North
says that?
Alabama.
Who wrote that? Wait a minute. Who wrote that?
This is roarlions.com. This is their. I'll read you the first.
Have they
quote.
moved Mike the Tiger in Baton Rouge?
I'll read you the first amendment. The University of North Alabama boasts the only live lion mascots. My bad. the only live lion mascots
Okay.
in the country living on a college campus. Leo the Third.
Well, Virginia Tech has the only poultry mascot in the entire
The old
country.
live poultry
Come on.
mascot.
The two lions live in a 12,760 square foot habitat.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well,
But
they've
they are
got
the
two
lions.
of them.
So there's two. They're the lions.
Okay.
In case something happens to one of them. Well, Virginia Tech probably has like scores of turkeys.
Well, turkeys only live like 2 years, so you got to replace those things fast.
Right. So you need a whole.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. Did you guys go through Georgia Tech? I was looking at it.
Yeah, that should be a win. That should be.
So what are we, 4-1 now? Okay.
4-1 or 5-0. So you're either 4-1 or 5-0 heading into that North
All
Carolina.
right, here we go at UNC.
Toss up.
Yeah, absolutely a 50-50 game. Absolutely 50-50. It's just North Carolina's got a great quarterback. That guy's top notch. They haven't had a good defense in over 10 years now at North Carolina. And that defense in 2009 was a Butch Davis defense that they recruited, air quotes, right?
Right.
So until they start playing defense, you've got to consider that game a crapshoot. Like, even if they have a great quarterback, you can outscore them.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so that's UNC at a toss-up. Let's keep going down. Boston College on a Thursday.
No A.J. Dillon.
They do have A.J. Brown coming back, who played well against Tech secondary last year at quarterback.
Did he hit the? So he is coming back.
I believe he was the same age.
I thought he already hit. I thought I already hit the portal.
Oh, all right, hold on. Let me.
I can't keep
tore
up
his
with
knee
that
up,
stuff.
right?
Yeah, he got hurt.
Oh, sorry,
again.
no, not AJ. That's not. I got his name wrong. I apologize.
I'm talking.
You're right. AJ Dillon declared for the draft.
Brown, right?
Anthony
Brown.
Look up Anthony Brown.
And
I thought he declared for. Well, not declared, but I thought he hit the portal. I could be wrong.
Let's see. Anthony Brown. Will explore options playing elsewhere after the redshirt junior entered his name Monday in the NCAA transfer portal. That was on December 9th. So, good point.
I haven't heard anything since then. Or have we? I don't know.
It does not look like.
At any rate, I don't know. I felt like that's a game Tech would have won last year.
And they have a new coach coming in as well.
There's a lot of unknown there because they have a new coach, but that's a game Tech should win at home.
Right.
At Louisville.
Slightly favor Tech in that one because
I agree with that. I wouldn't call it a toss-up.
Right. Tech is better defensively than Louisville. Like Louisville got such a great passing attack and everything, but Virginia Tech's got the best cornerback combination in the whole country, in Caleb Farley and Jermaine Waller. And then Louisville, unless their defense dramatically improves, I mean, Virginia Tech's going to be able to score points in that game.
I think the prevailing opinion is that Louisville is very well coached offensively. I didn't watch them a lot, but I know that even in there was one game, and I don't remember who it was against. But they were outmatched, and they started out really well. And then about a quarter and a half into it, the coaching staff for the other team caught up to them, and that was the end of that.
Might have been the opening game of the year against Notre Dame. They started out with an early lead, and then
probably Kentucky.
Kentucky they got blasted from the get-go.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was kind of weird. I think that was the only game that happened to them, man. But anyway, that one's a bit of a toss-up, but favoring Tech.
Yeah.
Okay. At Pittsburgh on the Friday night, November 6th.
I think on paper Tech has a personnel matchup advantage in that game, and that Pitt is one-dimensional offensively. Based on what we know from this past season, that doesn't mean things won't change or can't change between now and then.
Evan, can you look up the history between Tech and Pitt?
When Pitt scored 36 against Tech back in 2016 at Pitt, they were a team that year that could run the ball and throw the ball. They were a balanced offense. 2018 Virginia Tech's defense was just so bad you don't kind of discount that, but Pitt's gonna have to get a running game back if they
all right. So Malcolm, see the
Tech.
full games list page, the link over to the right underneath the Pitt logo. Click that, and I want to see if Virginia Tech has won in Pittsburgh.
2016.
Yeah, 2016.
Fuente's first
That
year.
was Fuente's first year. Remember, it was such a huge deal. 3 receivers over 100 yards.
Yeah, but that's the only road win at Pitt since dating back to '99.
Dating back to their old stadium.
Right.
So
Dating back to
Heinz
Big
Field
East
has been
and
an
all that.
awful place. I will say, if Virginia Tech can win in the Carrier Dome in basketball, they can win at Pitt in football. But I mean, like I said, Tech has a personnel advantage, but it's Pitt on the road. So does that
Anything can
cancel
happen.
each other out? Yeah. So that's kind of a toss up to me.
All right, Miami at home. Again, toss
Oh,
up.
I mean, you might as well just
Roll the dice.
roll the dice, go out on the street, ask a random person that doesn't know anything about sports at all. I mean, they have just as good a chance of picking that game as we do, especially right now.
But I think I'm going to land on Tech's side on that one.
Let me ask you something. Are you more nervous about the Pitt or Miami game right now?
Pitt.
Miami. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Tech shouldn't have won at Miami this past year. They were coming off a 35-point loss, and they were playing on the road. This year they got Miami at home, and everybody knows Miami has cultural issues and things like that, but they're still going to have more talent. And all I got to do is get it together for 3 hours.
Decide to play a game.
Right. So I don't know. I will say that, like, if I was starting a football team from scratch and you showed me the teams I was playing, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'd rather play Pitt just from a pure talent standpoint. They both concern me, but for different reasons.
All right, how about at Duke, November 21st, the final road game of the year?
That's going to be a win.
It just doesn't make any sense to say, oh, that's definitely going to be a win when you just lost to them 45-10. But and we don't know where either team will be mentally at this point. But I think Duke under David Cutcliffe has, that they've steadily slid.
You've seen peak Cutcliffe.
You've seen peak Cutcliffe at Duke, right? There's only so many times you can. Cutcliffe's a great coach. I don't want anybody to take the way I say this wrong. There's only so many times you can get lucky on the recruiting trail.
Well, Wake Forest and Jim Grobe, they got lucky once.
Right, exactly. They rode that one class into the ACC title game.
Yeah.
07?
06.
Oh, was it 06?
Yeah, 06. And it was 3-star recruits, 2-star and 3-star recruits who happened to be like first-round pick, like that linebacker, and they had Alfonso Smith, who was a second-round pick.
Didn't Aaron Curry wind up being the number one pick in the draft?
He was a 4th overall pick in the draft by Seattle, I think. And then Cutcliffe, they get Jamison Crowder, undersized 3-star recruit that nobody really wants, and just like that, he's in the NFL. And then Daniel Jones was a walk-on, and then a first-round pick, right? Eventually, unless you're able to start beating out major schools for blue chip recruits, you can only go to that 2-star, 3-star well so many times when it comes to finding elite players.
Right.
So I think they're out of NFL receivers and out of NFL quarterbacks down there. Yeah. And
Jameson Crowder, the star receiver of the New York Jets. Is that what you're saying?
Right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. So that is. I think you guys bring up great points about Duke there. And then close the year. Just yes or no. Commonwealth Cup right now, in your opinion, is it coming back to Blacksburg this year?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, it's you would have to favor Tech right now. Tech returns almost everybody. UVA lost. Like I said, Bryce Perkins had to have a once in 16-year performance against Tech for them to win that game, and he did. Yeah. I mean, 20% chance on balls, or 20% accuracy rate on balls 20 or more yards downfield, and he put it in there perfectly.
So this is shaking out to almost like a 9-3 prediction.
Yeah, I think we put down Penn State as a loss, and then what do we have? Carolina
toss up. You said toss up.
We had like 3 toss ups.
Yeah.
So let's say if 2 out of the 3 toss ups go your way, then you're 10-2. If 1 out of the 3 toss ups go your way, you're 9-3.
Yeah.
And this is the last thing I'll ask, and then we got to move on because it is 10:51 and we're rolling through here. We got to talk basketball. You look at the last couple of years, there has been a game that nobody saw coming. Syracuse in the Carrier Dome in 2016, Old Dominion in 17, Duke this year. Is there a game on that schedule
that we can't see coming?
That you cannot see coming? Is there one game you're like? I mean, I know that's, but you know what I mean. I mean, there's been a lot of games where just you don't see it coming and it happens.
Okay, I would say either Thursday night against Boston College or at Duke, because those are the Georgia Tech. I literally don't see coming. I don't see how they can possibly beat Virginia Tech.
I'm going to agree with you on this in terms of talent and that rebuild. I agree.
Last year, I didn't see 45-10 coming, but I picked Duke to beat Virginia Tech in my game preview. So from a win-loss standpoint, that game did not surprise me at all. 45-10 surprised me. I would be shocked if Georgia Tech beat Virginia Tech in Lane Stadium this year, based on what I know right now. So I would say more likely either Boston College or Duke. Boston College is one of those teams that are going to come in and run the ball. And if Virginia Tech goes out there and has a couple of turnovers that cost themselves scoring opportunity, BC is going to see more of the ball, and they're going to run more clock, and they'll keep the game close into the fourth quarter and get you frustrated. And then Duke being a road game between Miami and Virginia.
I would say for me it would be not losing at Louisville, but getting blown out at Louisville. That would. It's not that I don't see that coming. Clearly, I'm thinking about it, but that would really disappoint me. And surprise isn't the right word, but really disappoint.
Okay, there we go. This has been a great breakdown. Like you said, you're looking at, as we just did, about 9-3. Like you guys were just saying, ceiling 10-2.
I wouldn't say ceiling 10-2. The ceiling.
Yeah, that's the thing.
What is the ceiling for this team?
11-1.
Yeah, I mean, if everything goes right, this team's not talented enough to go unbeaten. I mean, my gosh, the other teams we play would have to have a rash of injuries or something like that. We'd have to have every perfect bounce in every conceivable way to go unbeaten. But if we had a good season as far as lucky breaks go, and no key injuries and things like that, then 11-1 is possible. But that's pretty much everything lines up properly, I think.
Yeah. And knowing what we know about guys coming back for Virginia Tech at this point in time, I think, and not knowing about injuries can always throw things off. But I think 8-4 is probably the floor.
Probably. I mean, now we don't even know who the backup quarterback's going to be at this point.
Yeah.
And you saw how limited the offense was. Without Hendon Hooker against Notre Dame.
But I think with Burmeister and Hooker both on the roster at quarterback, I would hope.
I would hope that Burmeister would be able to execute the passing game at a higher level than Quincy. Or Quincy,
than last year.
Right,
Quincy.
right. Well, now to be fair to Quincy, he's going into his third year in the program now, and a lot of guys take a big step that year. So we'll see. Should be an interesting spring.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's a great way to end the conversation. Can we talk about the football schedule for the last 50 minutes? You can go to techsideline.com right now and look at the article that Chris just put out about the schedule that has been released.
We'll have a TSL Pass article later today about it.
Yeah, if you want to give it an over/under, I'd say the over/under that makes me pause is 9.5.
Something like that. Yeah,
that's what I would think too. All right, we've got more to talk about here on the Tech Sideline Podcast. When we come back, Virginia Tech is tonight a must-win game against North Carolina. We'll ask Will and Chris. Plus, we'll get to your questions all coming up on the Tech Sideline Podcast presented by the Fisher Law Firm. Welcome back to the Tech Sideline Podcast presented by the Fisher Law Firm. So glad you could join us for episode 111. Again, we've got our normal crew here today as we record on Wednesday, January 22nd. Malcolm Stewart, our producers, taking your questions on Facebook Live. We'll get to those shortly. On the podcast set, Will Stewart, Chris Coleman, I'm Evan Hughes. Transition from the gridiron to the basketball floor. Virginia Tech tonight hosting North Carolina, who is 8-9, 1-5 in ACC play. And the Hokies are
really bad.
And the Hokies are 7-point favorites.
Yeah.
Will, is tonight a must-win for Virginia Tech?
For my emotional well-being, it is. Mike Young has, with his coaching job this year and with what the players have done, I'm trying to find the right phrasing here. They've kept Tech fans. I don't want to say emotionally engaged. They've just kept him on a high. He's kept him on a high all year long. The only time I got a little down was when they lost to Dayton and BYU. Boom, boom, blowouts, 2 games.
The 2 days after beating Michigan State.
But they just beaten Michigan State. And since then, it's been a good, steady production string of wins. There's never been and I always tell people, look at college basketball in groups of 3, the games in groups of 3. Kind of parse it out that way, because college football is 12 games. College basketball is 30, 31, 32, 33, whatever. Kind of evaluate each group of 3 games as like you evaluate a football game, which means you don't want to lose 2 out of 3. And again, I'm not talking about NCAA chances here or anything like that. I'm just talking about your mindset, So I came into these 2 games. I think I said this on the last podcast. I came into these 2 games wanting Tech to win one of the 2, Syracuse and UNC at home. At least one of the 2. Winning both of them would be great. So I really, for my emotional well-being and the momentum of the program, I don't want to lose this one after losing the Syracuse one, because then you drop to 500 in the ACC, right?
Yeah, and I don't know what quadrant that would be. I don't have the numbers.
That's
right
a bad home loss.
It's
is what
it's
that
a
is.
quadrant 3, probably home loss.
Yeah.
I mean, North Carolina's like 120th in the net, 130, something like that.
Do you mind repeating that one more time again? North Carolina is what in the net?
120 or 130, something like that.
Last in the ACC.
Next to last, I think.
Yeah, down there with Wake
BC.
Forest.
And not to mention
BC. No, BC's won 2 games in the ACC.
Yeah, but their net ranking, though.
Oh, okay. I'm talking about record in the standings.
And Tech plays at BC on Saturday. So if you're able to pick up a win against North Carolina tonight and knock off BC Saturday,
sure,
puts you at 6-3 in ACC play.
And that feels a lot better than being 4-4 after the UNC.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I don't think there's any such thing as a must-win on January 22nd or whatever it is when you're talking a 30 to 32 game basketball season. The only must-wins in basketball are tournament basketball games, right? Because you've got if Virginia Tech loses tonight, there's plenty of time to make up
Oh,
for it.
here Malcolm
Now-
has put the net up there because
Okay.
Ox fusses at us when we talk
Yeah.
about the net.
I know,
Malcolm, do you
we
mind
should-
clicking on
Yeah, so
that graphic?
Click the graphic.
Not that I can see it, but you know.
There you go.
Wow, that is a great graphic.
And this is from yesterday. This is disregarding games from last night. And I have no idea what happened in games last night.
Yeah. So
Were there ACC games last night? There should have been.
gosh, why can I not remember? Wake Forest and Clemson played last night, if I remember correctly,
Yeah,
and,
well,
and that
who
was a
won?
battle, but Clemson won it.
Clemson won.
And I don't remember after that.
Okay.
Gosh.
Well, it's good that Clemson won because they were 75th in the net as of yesterday. So theoretically, they should be up a couple spots now. And since Virginia Tech picked up a road win over Clemson, you want them to stay in the top 75.
Yeah.
You want them to stay in the top 75 because a top 75 win in the net on the road is a quality one win.
So today is the 22nd, correct? And this graphic that we're showing up on the television screen is through 121, so it includes games of last night.
Okay. And what is
And
this?
Clemson has dropped to 76th.
What?
in
After
the net.
winning? Where's Syracuse? 70th still?
Yes.
70.
Okay,
Yep.
so as of today, Tech has 2 quadrant one wins. So by losing to Syracuse, Virginia Tech gained a quadrant one win
Yeah.
because they beat Syracuse on the road earlier.
Yeah.
But then by beating Virginia Tech on Saturday, Syracuse jumped into the top 75. So
Yeah.
Virginia Tech got themselves a second quadrant one win now.
Yeah, so
but,
Clemson is now Q2.
and
right.
now what's North Carolina?
The future opponents are not shown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think they were 120th as of yesterday, but
Yeah.
That would put
so
them in
it's
quadrant three.
not a must win game, but there aren't that many opportunities for quadrant one wins for Virginia Tech this year. It's the gift and curse of a down year in the ACC. The gift being that a freshman laden team actually has a chance to compete, and the curse being that you're not going to have that many opportunities for quadrant one wins.
Yeah.
So you don't want to lose at home to North Carolina. It's not a must win because you never know what's going to happen after this, but it would be damaging. Not only to the tournament resume, but also to morale a little bit if you lose it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's why I talked about my emotional
for the
well-being.
short term. It doesn't mean anything for the long term of the program and everything like that.
North Carolina 8-9 overall, 1-5 in ACC play. Of course, the story of their season is Cole Anthony, one of the top freshmen in the country, sidelined with an injury.
Of course, he'll come back tonight. They say he's not. But
He was averaging 19 points per game, 6 rebounds a game, and nearly 4 assists per game in 33 minutes. Now, Garrison Brooks has stepped up in production, 14 points per game, 9 rebounds a game. He's 6'10", and then Armando Baycott out of Richmond, Virginia, 10 points per game, almost 8 rebounds per
They're
game.
big.
So, what do you expect from Virginia Tech defensively to match up against Brooks and Baycott?
I don't know what I expect defensively. I don't know much about X's and O's basketball, but I know that if Virginia Tech does well on the defensive glass, they stand a really good chance of winning the game. Now, if you give UNC a lot of second chance opportunities with their size on the inside, they can really hurt Tech. But if Virginia Tech is good on the defensive glass, I think they're going to win the game.
Yeah, Virginia Tech turns the ball over so little that I don't see Carolina getting runouts, not in any sort of quantity anyway. So they're not going to have that in their holster.
Yeah.
I agree. Without having studied them yet, we're going to do our preview later today, and not really knowing anything about them. Just UNC historically is a taller, rangier team than Virginia Tech, and that's where the trouble could come.
To me, tonight's game is more mental than anything else. I think it's pretty well established that North Carolina is not very good. And
Right.
they're not very good because they're not as talented as they normally are, and they've had some key injuries.
Yeah.
But they're also not very good because they never lose, and they don't know how to handle losing now that they're losing.
Now that it's happening.
Roy Williams might not know how to handle it. The last time this Carolina team had a losing record before right now was back after the first game of the 2004-2005 season when they lost to Santa Clara.
And they were 0-1.
They were
And they won the
0-1.
national championship
And they
that
won the
year, right?
national championship that year. So this is a bunch of guys that they don't know how. I'm not sure they know how to handle losing. From a facing adversity standpoint, and I'm not sure Roy Williams knows how to coach him, or I don't think he knows what to say to him. He tried to challenge him by saying, "Oh, this team's not very talented," hoping that would tick him off, and it didn't. They got worse, and then he said, "Oh, this is the least athletic team I've ever had," thinking that would fire him up. It didn't. They got worse. So I don't think they can handle his criticisms of them. I think he's intending them to fire up the team, so to speak, but I think maybe it's had the opposite effect.
He doesn't have a lot of experience in that area.
Right.
Not at all. All right, so real quick, because we have to, we're going to talk about Landers Nolley and some news that came about on yesterday. Real quick, yes or no? Tech win tonight against North Carolina?
Yes.
Barring a bad shooting night from Virginia Tech, we've talked about that. Then a night where they might go out there and nobody's hitting. I think barring a really bad shooting night, I think Tech wins.
It's just scary to think that Carolina's got to win at some point, right?
Right.
Don't say those words. Don't
Not
say those
gonna say
three
those
words, though, Chris.
but they're due.
All right, so we've got 2 wins on the set here from Will and Chris, barring a bad shooting night from Will.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now let's transition to some news that came about on Tuesday afternoon. For those that did not see, Mark Berman of the Roanoke Times did an article on Landers Nolley and Tyrece Radford and kind of just their time at Virginia Tech, and it was a really good read. You go to the end of the article. This is what we're going to focus on. Was that Landers Nolley's dad was quoted in this RoanokeTimes.com article. Malcolm, the best producer in the land, has already put that article up on our screen for those watching. It's at the end right there. Highlight that, Malcolm. There we go. So I'll read a couple of paragraphs leading into it. Nolley's been named the ACC Freshman of the Week 5 times, but unlike some other freshmen, Nolley was not included last week in ESPN's latest mocked 2-round 2020 NBA draft. Quote, Landers is a pro. At the rate he's going, he won't be back next year. Close quote. That's from Landers Nolley's father. Chris, what should we make of that quote?
Well, he didn't say NBA. He said pro. And these days you can make 6 figures or 7 figures if you're really, really good playing professional basketball overseas. It's not just the ESPN mock draft.
Malcolm, leave that up there for now.
I generally use NBADraft.net, I think is what I use, because it's got like 70 or 80 mock drafts from all over the place, and it averages them all together. So in their average mock draft, he's not listed as being drafted at all in the first 2 rounds. So hardly anybody thinks he would get drafted if he came out after this year.
So let's read the next 2 paragraphs. Nolley said he won't think about the draft until after the season. Quote, if I thought about that, then I wouldn't be thinking about the season. How we're doing, proving people wrong, unquote, he said, he being Nolley. So good quote. Yeah. Really good answer. Yeah. He turned it right back around on this season and this team.
How about that quote right there? Quote, a lot of things that I still got to show y'all. Close quote from Nolley.
Yeah. So he's saying the right things. If he were to leave Virginia Tech after this year, this would not be a real surprise. You know.
Yeah. It's one of those like he shouldn't do it unless he thinks that going overseas for a year will help better prepare him for the NBA than staying in college for a year. Yeah. Or maybe even if you don't make the NBA, you just go right back to Europe or wherever and make your $500,000 or whatever. I mean, that's a pretty nice way to live, I think.
But we've just gotten some of the back channel stuff we've gotten just indicates that he's a shooting star. He won't be here very long. And now that said, when I watch him on the court, he seems to really enjoy playing for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, he plays hard and everything like that.
And I don't think he's a selfish player. Some people went after him after missing that last shot against NC.
Yeah, he just panicked and made a bad decision.
Yeah, but yeah. I see him passing the ball. He
had 7 assists that game.
He has a lot of assists. He's a pretty good passer, I think. But I think that he gets along well with his teammates, and he seems to be enjoying himself on the court. I don't think that's it.
Yeah. So but that being said, it would not shock me if he did not play basketball for Virginia Tech next year for whatever reason.
And, of course, we are seeing on a larger landscape, too, that a lot of players out of high school now are going overseas. I mean, you've got LaMelo Ball, who's projected to be the #1 overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft, playing professionally in Australia now. You've had Emmanuel Mudiay play overseas and then get drafted. And then it opens that whole can of worms about the one and done.
And some of these foreign teams are smart, too. I think there was a New Zealand team that signed a guy who was like a top 10 prospect coming out of high school last year. They signed him to a 2-year contract. So if anybody in the NBA drafts him, that NBA team basically has to purchase the contract.
Got to pay a buyout, right?
For that New Zealand team. So that New Zealand team will get a check for like $1 million, which is huge for them,
right?
From the NBA team. So that's a good business decision for somebody like that. And you think about it, man. I'm 18 years old. somebody in Australia, maybe not Australia, because I'm scared of all those poisonous animals and stuff they have.
Not
over
me,
there,
man.
but
Australia's cool.
Like some team in Italy or France, and we're like, man, we'll pay you $500,000 to come over and play basketball for a year.
Heck
Okay,
yeah.
instead of going to college and they make you go to class for a semester to stay eligible for the NCAA tournament, but you have no intention of staying in college for 4 years. You know what? I'll just go to France.
Yeah.
That sounds better to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe I'll stay there too. I don't know.
Interesting discussion. Again, that was an article on RoanokeTimes.com that Mark Berman did on Tyrece Radford and Landers Nolley. Okay, so I put on the message boards yesterday. I wanted to get some questions before the podcast, and Malcolm's going to take some from Facebook Live. So I'm going to read 2 or 3 and then turn it over to Malcolm for our questions part of the Tech Sideline podcast, and then we'll wrap things up.
So how many minutes are we at right now, Malcolm?
Hour 10.
Whew.
Yeah, rolling by.
I'm actually going to have Malcolm cut this one up after we'll do the full podcast video, but I think I also can have him slice it into scheduled discussion, basketball discussion, and Q&A.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start this first question. I thought this was a good one. This is from TR3NT, so Trent with a 3 in the middle for the E. Where do you all see the Virginia Tech football program in the next 4 to 6 years?
I think that will be determined in the next 12 to 18 months when or if they come up with some sort of a master plan for facilities or something. I mean, honestly, the strength of your program, the long-term view of your program isn't determined necessarily by your current head coach or anything like that. It's determined by the foundation of your program, by the fan support, the infrastructure, things like that. Like Justin Fuente may or may not be Virginia Tech's coach 6 years from now, but it's the other decisions that are made right now that will determine the long-term trajectory, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was asking how many years?
4 to 6.
I think for the next couple of years they'll be competitive for a Coastal Crown. The way things are trending down at North Carolina, they're going to have a really good quarterback for
3 more years.
Or 2 more years, yeah.
Right.
Was he a true freshman this past year?
Yeah.
And he declared after his junior year.
So they're going to have a really good quarterback for the next 2 years. They had a really good recruiting class this year, and I don't see any reason for that to stop. So unless Virginia Tech ups its recruiting game, I think the talent's going to start leaning towards North Carolina. And Miami's always Miami, So I think competing for Coastal Crowns once you get more than a couple of years out is going to be problematic unless the recruiting at Virginia Tech gets better.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I beyond 2 years, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Jason H. writes about recruiting in Virginia. Penn State seems to own the state of Virginia the last several years when it comes to recruiting. What happened? Where did it go wrong? And how does Virginia Tech win it back? Where do we start?
Now let's try to answer concisely.
I could write a 3,000-word article about that. I've done it plenty of times. Oh my gosh, it's just a factor of so many things.
Well, they've always recruited, to my thinking, they've always recruited Richmond well.
Yeah, they have.
That goes way back. But part of it is that, and I think, and Chris could maybe back this up with numbers, I think there's more talent coming out of Northern Virginia now.
There is.
There's more highly rated recruits coming out of there than there is the eastern
Northern
part
Virginia is probably just as close to Happy Valley as it is
it's
to
pretty much
Blacksburg.
equidistant.
Right. And a lot of those Northern Virginia kids, they're not actually from Virginia anyway.
Right.
Like their parents just moved to D.C. for a job.
Right.
Maybe they're from Allentown, Pennsylvania, for all I know, originally. Right.
Yeah.
So
that's part of what's happening.
That's part of what's going on. So part of the issue here is there's 2 areas of the state in Northern Virginia where there's a lot of people who aren't native Virginians, and the 757 because of the Navy base and the military presence. It's a lot of people there that aren't necessarily native Virginians either. So it's an interesting state. It's not like Texas, Not to say that they don't have Navy bases and things like that down there, but if you're from Texas, you're from Texas, kind of.
Yeah, and in general in Virginia, the trend has gotten away from, there were some storied high school rivalries in the past. Hampton, Phoebus, some of the schools.
Now the Peninsula just doesn't produce any talent anymore. Yeah. I mean, Bruton High School, where Brian Randall went, they couldn't even field a complete team and play a full schedule a couple years ago.
And you remember the East-West High School All-Star Game used to be a big deal. So there was this emotional investment in your high school program and the state as a whole. that I don't really see now.
It's
so
not.
I also think that's part of it. Plus, James Franklin's a great recruiter.
Yeah.
Great salesman. One of the things he says that sells to large portions of recruits is, I want to be the first African American to win a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
When you go into an African American home and you say that resonates. They connect with that.
No question. And some of it is where I think Virginia Tech was marshaling all their resources back in the heyday of Virginia Tech recruiting. I mean, the third highest paid coaching staff in the country, the newest football facility in the country, just about in the Merriman Center. So part of this is Virginia Tech dropping off, but a lot of it is other schools who always had more resources. They just weren't using them.
They weren't focusing on the state of Virginia.
Right. Now they're using them. Yeah. Right. And there's nothing Tech can do about it from that end. So there's things Virginia Tech can do better, but a lot of this issue is other programs finally getting their stuff together.
Yeah.
Right? So there's nothing you can do about that part of it.
Great question. I knew that would get a really good answer, and it's got a lot of layers to it, as you guys just talked about. Last one for me, and I'll turn it over to Malcolm. Are you Hokie? Writes, hypothetically, if Kerry Blackshear had remained at Virginia Tech, where would the basketball team be? NIT lock, NCAA tournament lock, ACC championship contender? Question.
Oh my gosh, man! See, I saw that question when he asked it.
Me too, and I thought it was a good one.
And it's been breaking my heart lately thinking about how good this team would be with Kerry Blackshear.
I'm thinking about it. Thinking about all their losses. All right, he wouldn't have made them beat Dayton or St. Joe's.
You mean
BYU?
BYU, yeah. Thinking about Old Atlantic 10 days, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know where that
came but he wouldn't have made the difference in those games. Tech lost to Duke by 14, but at the same time, that was a single-digit game for most of the contest.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe he makes a difference, maybe he doesn't. Wouldn't have made the difference in a 26-point loss to UVA, most likely. Could have made the difference against Syracuse.
Yeah.
And we don't know how many close losses or close wins or all that are coming, but I think he might be the difference between NIT and NCAA tournament by the end of the year.
I think so.
Who really knows?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And
I actually think Virginia Tech would be on an NCAA track if they had Kerry Blackshear here.
And the thing is, they're still on track. Like, they're still in the bracketology right now.
Would continue to be.
Right. Right now, you're looking at, the season ended tomorrow. I think a lot of people would say 10 to 12 seed or something like that. And, maybe it's an 8 seed with Blackshear, which would actually be worse.
Yeah.
But I don't care about seeding this year, man. If it comes down to it on Selection Sunday, I'll care about it. But to me, just if you make the tournament, it's a win-win. If you do anything once you get there, it's just a bonus, right? But yeah, I gotta think he would have helped us win at least one more game to this point.
And
like the Syracuse game.
Now, I'm not sure even with Blackshear in a tournament setting if they could climb the Louisville or Florida State mountain, particularly Florida State. Yeah. Florida State's just a problem for Virginia Tech.
Well, they're always really tall. They have a lot of really tall players.
Their defense is apparently fierce this year, so we'll find that out. So I wouldn't say ACC champions, but
I don't think. And who knows about that Duke game? Coach K went small on that game to stop Tech's cuts. I don't know if you can go small. I don't think you can put a 6'7" center out there against Blackshear.
Right.
I don't think you can have Alex White play in the 5 against
so Virginia
Blackshear.
Tech, instead of being 4-3 in the ACC, could be 6-1.
It could be. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Could be.
Real quick. I want to spend like 30 seconds on this because it just crossed my mind when I read this question last night. Do you ever think about last year's team and if things that worked out with Chris Clark and if Virginia Tech had Landers Nolley, what it could have been?
Sure.
And with Justin Robinson healthy, absolutely.
Justin Robinson healthy, that's the third thing.
Everything. I mean, that's a team that could have won the national. They could have won it anyway, even without Chris Clark. I mean, they made the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat in a room with Coach K in December, and he said that's a team that could have won the national championship last year.
Yeah.
There were 5 teams in the ACC that could have won it, and Virginia Tech was one of them.
Yep. Yeah, I think about that to answer your question.
Yeah, I think about it all the time. It's hard not to think about it, man.
These little windows open up.
Yeah, it's rare when the windows come open. And so when it doesn't happen, you always think about the what ifs.
Michael Vick, 1999.
What if Michael Vick didn't turn the wrong way on the option on the first drive of the game?
Yeah.
What if Bobby Bowden has suspended Peter Warwick?
Yeah, that's funny. You get comedy here on the podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
It has been a long wait to turn it over to Malcolm Stewart. I'm sure we've got some questions. Malcolm, what's going on, buddy?
All right, let's get started with James Copeland asks, should we have gone to the SEC when we had an offer to have more money and better facilities, or was staying in the ACC better to compete for championships?
Yeah, there's two ways to look at that. It depends on how you use that extra money and those extra resources. All right, I know South Carolina has better facilities and more money, but that's not winning many more games, is it? They're just facing tougher competition.
Yeah.
They got to play Florida and Georgia and the rest of the SEC. 100,000 seat stadium and 100+ million. God, I don't know where Tennessee is in revenue now. Probably 140, 150 or more.
Yeah.
Hasn't helped them any. They stink.
Yeah.
Joining the SEC hasn't helped Missouri. It doesn't seem like.
By the way, I watched Missouri play a basketball game last night of Texas A&M. They were hosting Texas A&M. Not that this is relevant. A lot of empty seats in Missouri's Coliseum.
Yeah.
A lot.
And that's a historically good basketball program.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know if the Hokies would be where they are in basketball. They would have more money. I don't know if that more money would equal more wins. The bowl streak would have ended last year for sure. If not, well, the bowl streak would have ended before in one of those.
Except Virginia Tech may have recruited better if they were in the SEC and it'd be a whole different program.
They may have. So there's no way to know. If you think there's a 5 to 10% chance of Virginia Tech winning the ACC as long as Clemson stays where Clemson is right now, then there's even less of a chance in the SEC because there's 3 Clemsons in the SEC, right?
Yeah.
There's Alabama and LSU in one division, and there's Georgia in the other division. So you probably won't even make you don't even have much of a chance to win your division if you're in the SEC East. Tech at least has a chance to win their division in the ACC. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And I think as time goes by, I don't think we could fully answer the question yet. Like, what if 10 years from now the college football landscape is totally different? Like, I'm not even sure we'll have conferences for football long term. I don't see the point. Like if you can have a super league of like the top 20 programs or something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's just so hard.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, it really is.
Some things would be
a good one, but
some things would be better, and some things wouldn't be better.
Right? Yeah, I think it kind of depends on your preference as a fan.
Yeah. I know it'd be more exciting week in, week out. You wouldn't.
Well, it would unless you were getting drilled week in and week out. That'd get old pretty fast.
Yeah,
there are some years where Tech would be getting drilled.
Yeah.
It's just I think as hard as it is to stay consistent in the ACC, I think it'd be even harder to do it in the SEC. I think there was a window when Georgia and Florida were both somewhat down where Virginia Tech could have really been a successful SEC East program. But now that Georgia has righted the ship and Florida finally has a good coach, that window has closed.
Yeah.
Good question.
John Houchins just chimed in and wants me to ask how Boots got that nickname.
I have no idea.
I don't either.
I think I've been around him when somebody asked him that question, but I don't think I retained his answer in my head. That's a good question. I'll ask it on the boards.
Asking about Tyrece Radford, his nickname is Boots.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Clark Ruland, in your opinion, which games would you make the effect games next season? White, orange, maroon?
White, orange, maroon. My gosh. Well, you can't do white against Penn State.
I was about to say.
The whole stadium would be white, right?
And please don't do orange against Penn State.
Yeah, I would.
Why is that? No.
Just because I don't like orange uniforms and I don't like the track record wearing
Do
them.
orange against North Alabama. Somebody like that, because I don't like orange either. I might do. I don't think you need to have anything for Penn State, right?
Right.
It's just Penn State is Penn State.
Maybe wear all maroon, but it doesn't have to be maroon effect.
How about the
It doesn't
Thursday
have
game?
to
You
be.
do something.
You could.
I know they've worn orange against against Georgia Tech before, so
All right, you can't wear orange against Virginia. That's not allowed.
or Miami.
Georgia Tech maybe is the whiteout game or something like that.
I would say North Alabama whiteout, Georgia Tech orange, Miami maroon.
That's fair. Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, and BC just BC.
Thanks, Clark. Thanks for that great car you've got up there too that you've donated to the podcast set. And
I moved it back down where Clark could see it.
yeah, I like it. And we've got the Independence Bowl. That was Clark,
We
right?
got Stick It in Beer.
Yeah.
Clark Designs.
We got This Is Gnome. So
Yep.
that doesn't have anything to do with Clark though. But Clark is all over the set.
Yeah,
He is. Cool. How about we do one more, Malcolm?
Sure. Eric Fisher, how was Radford so lightly recruited by everyone?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Yeah,
Lightly recruited. By lightly recruited, you mean non-recruited.
Did you read Berman's entire article, because it may be in there?
I know this. Like, if you go to his 247 recruiting profile, not only is he not listed with any offers, he's not even listed with any interest from any teams.
Right.
Like, not even Virginia Tech. Like, when he showed up at last year's media day, everybody assumed he was a walk-on, because he's the only student athlete that I can ever remember in the history of Virginia Tech athletics who was not actually introduced in some kind of press release when he signed or when he enrolled. So I don't know. I think I wasn't around when he said this, but he said, like, when he told a barber, I think maybe, that when he got to Tech, he couldn't do like a forearm push-up, which
I find that hard to believe.
I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think he led Louisiana in rebounding as like a 6'1" guard or something like that. So I have no idea how in the heck he ended up at Virginia Tech.
He must not have been on the AAU circuit.
But
Somebody would have.
that must be it. I mean, somebody would have seen him on the AAU circuit, right? Well, these days, I think a lot of people are really focused on three-point shooting. He can't shoot. Mm-hmm. We don't even know what position he played in high school. For all I know, he might have been like his team's power forward or something, with a small lineup or something, and just didn't handle the ball very much. So I don't know, but I'm glad. I'm glad it happened.
I think I'm more comfortable with him left as a man of mystery.
Yeah,
I think
for
we
sure.
just need to appreciate Tyrece Radford in the moment without trying to figure him out. Mm-hmm. He is what he is, and it's awesome.
Yep.
There you go. All right. It has almost been 90 minutes again. And it feels like it's flown by.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great questions as always, and a lot of them today were really good. And the questions I feel like where there's layers to it are always really good questions.
So we are looking to get Tony Roby on the podcast, correct?
Yep, it's confirmed. So Coach Roby will be on next Wednesday at 10 in the morning. Looking forward to having Coach on next Wednesday. That'll be after the UNC duel. Tech number 3 in the country right now.
Now, we tried to get Tony today or tomorrow before ACC duels started, but we got bumped by Packer and Durham. They called him up, yesterday?
I believe so, yeah. But, I mean, that's going to be great that he's going to go on Packer and Durham.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Yeah, he was on this morning. So that's why he wasn't able to be here. Or was it tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
Yeah, I think it's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah, well, if I ever meet Mark Packer, I'll have to give him a hard time about that.
But yes, next Wednesday, it'll be great to talk to him. He's always great. We appreciate Coach coming on and always being so open and giving up his time during the season.
The busy season for him.
Yep. So we will be back Monday. Monday at 9:30 should be normal time for a podcast.
Should be. So let me throw one more thing in there about wrestling. If you go to Tech Sideline and look around the site, you will see a link to order tickets for the Moss Arts Center dual meet against Duke, which I believe is February 8th, which I believe is a Saturday.
And that's going to be a blowout, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah. So last time I checked, there were about 100 to 110 tickets left. So
it might be 45-10 Virginia Tech this time around.
There you go. Yeah. It's only $10 a ticket, so this is not an expensive ticket, and it's a really cool way to watch wrestling. I went either last year or the year before and really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Hashtag get Chris Coleman to Moss Arts Center. We're starting that trend.
All right.
I think you'd enjoy it. I really do. So, all right. Well, great show today. Again, TechSideline.com. We've got great content up right now. Great article about the quadrant wins, Tyrece Radford, the schedule, Virginia Tech baseball, freshman report. I think I saw a couple days ago still on there. Or
There's a defensive true freshman report
that's what
on there.
Yep.
I'm going to write up a TSL pass article on the schedule this afternoon. What's today?
The 22nd.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay. Off the top of my head, I don't know what we'll do tomorrow. Friday Q&A on Friday. Yeah, I mean, it's mid-January. You think there's not as much to talk about, but there still is.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, yesterday was first day of classes, so you should be expecting transfer portal news.
Yes, very, very soon.
We've heard 5 names.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure it'll all become public. Maybe public.
None of them particularly surprising
Right.
if you've been listening to us all year.
Yeah. Or just thinking about things yourself.
Yeah.
Nothing shocking there.
Yeah.
So
There you have it. And we'll talk Tech basketball on Monday for sure. That'll be off of, a little bit. The UNC game will be passed, but we'll have the Boston College game to look at. Tech plays at BC on Saturday. Home game for Wabisa Beatty, as he always talks about, going home and playing in front of his family and friends. And I'm sure we'll have some football news. Something will happen in the next couple of days. Just saying. Don't know what, but I'm sure there'll be something to talk about.
Sure, something will happen.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I don't know what, but there's something that could come up. So, all right, well, that'll do it for today's episode of Tech Sideline Podcast. A reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate it as always. Be sure to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Tech Sideline. Be sure to give us a follow. And that'll do it for today's podcast. For our the best producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart, behind the scenes on the podcast set, our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our general manager and founder, Will Stewart. I'm Evan Hughes, podcast host saying so long. Thanks so much for listening. This has been the Tech Sideline Podcast presented by the Fisher Law Firm.